Today we're going to interview Reverend Louis Bertoni. He's been a long and faithful citizen and pastor here in the city of Vermilion. And we hope that we can all appreciate what he has done and what he stands for. Okay, Louis, would you tell us your full name?
Louis Eugene Bertoni.
Okay. Where were you born and what year?
I was born in New Philadelphia, Ohio in 1930. September. In fact, my birthday is coming up in a few days.
Oh. And as far as your family, tell us who is in your original family.
Well, my parents, I was named after my father, so he is Louis A., not Louis E. But I was named after him. And my mother was, she went by the name of Nancy, although her given name was Anastasia.
Okay.
And I have one sister, Marie Jacqueline.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what your parents did for a living.
Well, my father was a tool and die maker, and he worked at a local factory he also worked I'm not sure whether he worked in the factory as a tool and die maker or he did it on his own on the side, but he worked in a factory there in Dover, Ohio, next to New Philadelphia, for a number of years as well. My mother was basically a homemaker until my parents were divorced, and then she went to work as a bookkeeper, office manager at a local brewery in New Philadelphia.
Okay. Where did you go to school?
Well, I went to school, and actually I went to a school in New Philadelphia for grade school, but for high school, I went to high school in Dover. I went to a Catholic school, St. Joseph's Catholic High School in Dover, Ohio. So I had to ride the bus or some other way to get to, I usually rode the bus. I sometimes, occasionally would go in a different way, but mainly I had to go by bus to Dover, which is next door to New Philly.
Okay. What were your favorite subjects in school?
English and history.
I'm going to stop for a minute.
Okay. Picking up your high school, your favorite subjects were
English and history.
English and history.
Right.
What college did you attend and why?
Well, I started out at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh for a year because my teachers suggested that I go there. But it was in Pittsburgh, and back in those days you didn't really travel all that easily, and so I only stayed there a year. Then I came home and I worked for 2 years to make money to go to college. And then I went to Bowling Green State University, and I don't know how I happened to choose Bowling Green. I think it was just out of the blue, so to speak. There was no particular reason. I didn't know anyone who went there or had any connection with it. But that's where I finished. That's where I graduated from, and I managed to graduate because I went home after a year at Duquesne and worked for 2 years and to earn money to go back to school. But I stayed in school summers, so I was able to graduate within that same 4-year frame you usually think of as between high school and college.
And so what did you study in college?
I studied English literature. That was my major.
Well, the next question is, where did you meet Janet?
Well, that's an interesting story. I met Janet in Heidelberg, Germany.
How did you get over to Germany?
Well, I got to Germany. What took me there was I got a Fulbright grant after college. I got a Fulbright grant for study in Germany, and I chose Heidelberg. I didn't really choose Heidelberg. That's not quite, no, I shouldn't really put it that way. I didn't choose Heidelberg. I wanted to go to Freiburg in southern Germany, but there were no openings there, and the Fulbright, they sent me to Heidelberg. They chose Heidelberg, and that's where I ended up being, and that's where I met Janet. She was also a Fulbright student.
Do you have any memories of what you did when you were in Heidelberg?
Oh, I have lots of memories. Mostly attend classes. I got acquainted with a number of German students. We did some hiking and traveling. The German university system is somewhat different from the American system. You go to school for 3 months, and then there's a 2-month gap, and then you go back to school. So in that 2-month gap, I spent most of the time touring around Germany and went to Austria and northern Italy. So it was one of those things where, because of the kind of schedule we had that time available to travel. And we could do it. The Fulbright grant was actually, it didn't seem like much money, but it was actually a very generous grant because it paid all of the college expenses, and it gave us an additional $125 a month. Believe it or not, we could get by on that easily because it paid for all the rest of the expenses for school.
Do you want to stop in the future when a train comes?
No, it'll be okay. That mic up there is catching it.
Okay, now we're getting into some. Why did you decide to become a minister?
Well, that's one of those. My life has been a number of detours. I really didn't. Well, I didn't decide, of course, obviously, but I originally intended to go on to graduate school in English, and I was going to go to the University of Michigan. But I was not really happy with the situation there in Michigan when I went up to interview. And a college classmate, Kyle Bigham, was going to be attending the Oberlin School of Theology. So I went over there with him one day just to go along for a visit. And I had a very nice conversation with the dean, Dean Leonard Steidley, who was a real gentleman. And anyway, I got very interested in the school. I met several of the faculty members, teachers, and they were very nice people, very interesting people, more interesting than the people in the English department at Bowling Green. So I just decided to go there instead of going to Michigan, and it was a decision because I was uncertain about going to Michigan, so I decided to go to Oberlin.
Did you finish your studies there?
Yes, I got two degrees there. That was in the School of Theology. At that time, Oberlin College had the Graduate School of Theology as a separate entity, as part of the college. But they have since abandoned that. That no longer exists. But at that time, there was a Graduate School of Theology, and that's where I actually enrolled, was in the School of Theology. And that's where I finished degrees there.
Where did you go right after finishing at Oberlin?
I can't exactly remember what the change was, but I believe I went directly from there on to graduate school in religion, and I chose Harvard Divinity School because at that time Paul Tillich, who was a prominent theologian at that time, was going to Harvard as a professor, and I thought I would go there and study with him. So that's why I enrolled at Harvard and went there immediately. Yeah, I guess it was immediately after Oberlin because I graduated from Oberlin in '48. I may have spent another year working. I had to work to get to school.
What sorts of jobs did you do while you worked?
I worked in the brewery. I worked in the brewery where my mother was employed. I worked in the office and in the plant. I worked in the plant for a whole summer, bottling beer. You can imagine that, and we were bottling beer. I mean, we were turning out beer. Just loads and loads and loads of beer because it was just after the war and things were getting bad. Production was gearing up, and we just produced. I can remember working 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day at the brewery. That's primarily where I worked.
Okay.
I did work in the steel plant, but that was briefly. The Reeves steel plant was in Dover. My dad was working there at the time, so I worked there for part of a summer, but only for part of a summer.
Okay, after you got through with school, was Vermilion your first job as a pastor?
No. Well, no. When I was in Cambridge at Massachusetts at school at Harvard, it was not the students. The students in the School of Theology had to have assigned positions in a church. You had to be working in a church. So they assigned me to a church in Millbury, Massachusetts, about 40 miles west of Cambridge, and I had to go there to do my student intern, so to speak. And then after finishing that and after graduating at Harvard, I decided, the church offered me a job, so I decided to go there, and I spent 2 years there after graduate school, before coming back to Ohio.
Okay, then the big question is, what made you decide to come to Vermilion?
Well, that was more a matter of personal decision than an occupational decision. I came back to Ohio because, well, first of all, we at that point we had a child, and we were expecting another child, and we wanted to get somewhere where we were close to the grandparents. We didn't want to be in Massachusetts and have the grandparents in Ohio and Michigan, so we thought we would try to settle somewhere in Ohio, and so that we would be near the grandparents. But actually, the reason I came to Vermilion had to do with the then pastor of the Vermilion Church, who was Jim Beidel, who had been a classmate of mine at Oberlin, and he was the one who offered me the job at Vermilion. So that's why I came to Vermilion. It was because of his offer of a job. We might have settled somewhere farther west from Vermilion if otherwise. But at any rate, we wanted to get back to Ohio so it could be near the grandparents and they could have their grandchildren.
Okay, you've already touched a little bit about who has influenced you. Were there any leaders of the day that influenced you in your ministerial endeavors?
Well, I can think of several people. For one thing, there were the faculty at Oberlin was very small. The school was small. The Graduate School of Theology in Oberlin was probably not more than 40 or so students overall. So it was a small faculty. And the faculty were all pretty much, they were very close to the students. The students, there was a good relationship between students and faculty at the School of Theology. I had a particular teacher, Bill Lee, who was my favorite teacher, and I was very close to Bill Lee. He influenced me a great deal, both in my thinking and in my career plans. But Dean Sidley was also a very welcoming and very congenial person, and Dr. May, who was a prominent, internationally known Old Testament scholar, was there, and I took Old Testament from him, and he was really an excellent teacher, and I got very close. It was easy to get close to the faculty at Oberlin because the student body was small. So that's one of the reasons, and they were all more or less influential. Dick Wolf in church history was a very important person in my life at that time.
Okay, as during your role as pastor of the United Church of Christ here in Vermilion, what issues were most important to you as a pastor, I guess, and leader of your church?
Well, I think you must have to remember, maybe you don't, but that was back in 60s, and of course the racial issue was a very pronounced, very important, very upfront kind of issue, and I felt that was a very important issue for the church, and I really nudged the church. I really moved the church along in that direction very strongly. Other than that, I think basically it was, and I don't know where I came across this thought, but my thinking has always been influenced by the idea that the church should be an important part of the community, and that it should take the community seriously and take the concerns of the community seriously, and try to bring the influence of the church into the community, so that I really reached out in that respect, probably more so than had been customary prior to that time. But that was common among clergy at that time, to try to relate their churches to the issues of the time and the issues of the communities in which they were located.
Okay, as your role of church leader, could you tell us what might have been some of your most memorable moments?
Oh, I wrote down a number of things on a piece of
Okay.
paper here, and let me kind of look at that piece of paper, because I'll forget some of these things. Well, we started, among other things, for example, do you remember, were you in Vermilion at the time of the Hands Across America idea? We got involved in that, and had a major role in seeing that through the town. We also took a group of high school kids at the time to Washington for the march in 1963, and that didn't exactly sit well with some people in the community and church, but the kids found it very, very worthwhile, and I think it was well worth doing. We also started the food bank. That was a time, I think you may remember, when there was a downturn in the economy, and we just thought there was a need for some help. So we started the food bank, and were able to tie into a resource in Lorraine that gave us a lot of food to distribute. We started the food bank. We began a mobile meals program to deliver meals to the elderly and shut-in and people who were either temporarily or more or less permanently incapacitated. So we started that program. We got involved in a program called the British American Preachers Exchange. I don't know whether you were around then or not, or even remember that, but we had a number of English ministers come over for part of the summer. I never went to England. I never got on the exchange part of it. I don't know what happened there, but that never came. But we did host a number of I think 3 or 4, and one in particular, you remember Wally and Regina Ragg. They came over, and we somehow got very close to them. They visited again after they went back to England. They came back and visited, and we had quite a long relationship with Wally and Regina. So those were some of the things. And we also began a nursery school. I don't know if you remember that or not, but nursery schools were not known, not very common at that time. In fact, I don't think there were any in the area here. And I don't know where the idea ever came from. I think it was partly a sense that we ought to use our facility for more than just Sunday morning Sunday school classes. So we started a nursery school for preschool children, and that was very successful. In fact, it may still be in existence. I'm not sure. It may still be, but we started that. We also had a program called Friendly Town. I don't know whether you remember Friendly Town or not. That was done with a group in an organization in Cleveland, and I've forgotten the name of the organization in Cleveland that was responsible for Friendly Town. But that was a program that sent children from the inner city out to suburban and rural churches for a week. For several years, we were involved in Friendly Town. Then it somehow broke up. It ended. We didn't stop participating. The program simply came to an end. It had to be on the Cleveland end of the thing where they decided to discontinue that program. I don't know whether you remember Habitat for Humanity. Well, we were involved in that project, and we actually had Millard Fuller, the founder of Habitat, here to speak. He came to speak for a Sunday morning service and to talk to us about Habitat. I don't know that Habitat is still in existence or not. I've kind of lost track of some of that, but it may still be around. What else? I can't even think of the British American Preachers Exchange program. Yeah. Well, you also remember, I suppose, and I don't know whether this is still being done either. We started a prayer breakfast. I had been to somewhere in, I think it was in Canton, but I'm not entirely sure anymore, where they had such a thing. And I thought, that's a wonderful idea. It brings people from the communities together, and it brings people from the churches together. So we started a prayer breakfast, and it was, I don't know if that's still going on or not. I don't really know. Is it still going on? But it was very successful, and I think it was a very good program. So all in all, what I tried to do was to relate the church to the community and the community to the church, so that there would be a way of, they would commonly influence one another, and the church should be a part of the community. It shouldn't just be off in one corner just for Sunday morning worship, but it should be a Monday through Saturday, Monday through Sunday experience or situation. Anyway, that's some of that.
Thank you very much for that. Now, as a community leader, what did you enjoy doing for Vermilion?
Well, that's the question I hadn't really given to which I haven't given that much thought. First of all, I'm not sure that I'm really a community leader, but I'll step back from that one a little bit. I did, as I say, try to relate the church to the community. I tried to make it a part of the community and make the community aware of the church. Almost all of these programs have a component where they involve the community and the church. All of them: the mobile meals program, the food bank, all of them, all those programs that I've mentioned have a component where there is a direct community involvement, and I suppose that's what did I most enjoy doing? Well, I enjoyed doing all of them. I thought they were all well received, well participated in. They were, I thought, worth doing, and they did apparently speak to an element in the community that felt they were worthwhile, because we never had any trouble recruiting participation in the program. So I think really I would have to go back and say I really enjoyed all of those things. I did, for a number of years, work with the Chamber of Commerce. I can't recall exactly how that started. I think it started when who was the Chamber executive? They asked me to pray, I think, at some community function that the chamber was responsible for. I can't even think of what that was. What was her name? Maureen Coe. Maureen Coe was the executive at the chamber at the time, and she got me kind of interested in doing some things through the chamber. Some of these things were done with chamber support, obviously. My mind is that, these go back quite a few years, and I'm not entirely always clear about when they happened and who was involved, but those were some of the things that I felt were worth doing and I enjoyed doing.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. Do you have any kindly suggestions for the state of the city you've come to know, and the city that you live in? Do you have any insight as to how they might improve, in what areas they might improve?
That's a very good question, and I don't think I have a very good answer to that question. All the things that we did because we felt they were an important addition to the community life, and they were something that were absent from the community at the time. I haven't been that directly involved. I've been retired for a number of years, and in fact, it's somewhat unusual to stay in the community that you served. But we managed to do that because we spent a lot of time out of the city, and I don't directly involve myself anymore in what's going on in the chamber, or certainly not in the church. So I'm kind of out of touch with some of those things. But if I had to say,
Could you relate it? Do you have anything to say, like as far as city government? Anything along those lines?
Really, I no, I don't. I really don't. I'm not trying to beg off. I really don't. I don't. I've never really taken a very active part in the politics of Vermilion. I don't even know. No, I really don't have anything to say about that. My sense is that in political life, in general, not just in Vermilion, but in general, there's a great deal of unnecessary squabbling that wastes energy and time and the input of the citizens. And I don't relate that specifically to Vermilion at all. So I guess I really can't answer that question.
Okay. Now, do you have any other final memories? Would you like to talk about your grandchildren? Any hopes for any visions you might have, or any special memories with them? Or we had 4 sons. Mm-hmm. Of those 4 sons, only the youngest married, and I sometimes somewhat jokingly say that they had such a good mother that they couldn't find anybody quite like her. But I don't know whether that's the case or not. At any rate, the 3 older sons never married, and the youngest son did marry. Fortunately, he works at the conservatory at Oberlin College, and it lives nearby. So we have 3 grandsons. We had 4 sons, and we have 3 grandsons, and we were very close to them. And they spend a lot of time with us, and we spend a lot of time with them. We're enjoying them very much. We're watching them grow up. We have one who just became a teenager, and I find that a little hard to believe, but it's true. And we are enjoying our grandsons very much. They stay overnight, several nights during the week. Not during school time. And school time is always weekends. But we spend a lot of time with them, and we enjoy having them. I don't know what will become of them. Nicholas, the oldest one, is a bright enough kid, certainly. But what he will do, I just don't know at this point. I think it's too early for him even to say. He doesn't even think about that. We don't even make any we don't talk about that yet. He's too young for that. But I'll be curious to see what they do, what does happen to them over the years. I hope that I'll be around to see that. We got them late in our lives. We were well up in years before we had grandchildren, so we have to enjoy them while we're able to. Well, I guess we've asked all the questions that we have, unless there's any other memories that you'd like to reminisce about.
Well, I don't know. Over the years, we spent many years in Vermilion. Obviously. I mean, I came to Vermilion in 1960 when I was only 30, and we only had one child. So our family really has grown up in Vermilion, and we've pretty much settled in the community. We've gotten close to a lot of people in the community. It was an easy church to serve, in spite of the difficulties through the 60s with the racial issue, which was a very traumatic time both for the church and for myself. But we've known a lot of people. We've known them not just as church members, but as friends over the years. And I think of them as friends. I think of so many. There's no point in naming any, because I just start naming, I just end up naming everybody. So all in all, it's been a very rewarding and a very enjoyable and a wonderful time. We think of Vermilion fondly, and we'll certainly, if we ever move from Vermilion, we will certainly miss it.
Well, Louis, I would like to thank you for doing this for us, and I'm sure that we all appreciate all that you've done.
Well, I hope I've answered some of the questions
I have
reasonably well.
one question.
One question.
Where did you get married?
Where did we get married? Well, we got married. And my life has been. We were married in the living room of my professor's home in Oberlin. Janet's parents were uncertain about her marriage to me. They weren't quite ready for an Italian and a minister in the family. But we got along very well. However, we were not married. Her parents were living in Michigan at the time, and they weren't really happy about the marriage. So we were not married in Michigan. They had just moved to Barreton, so they were kind of new there too. So we were married. I asked Dr. Lee, who had been my professor at Oberlin, my thesis advisor. I asked him if he would conduct a marriage ceremony, and he agreed to do that. So we were married in the living room of his house in Oberlin. In 1957. Is that it?
It was an interesting story.
Well, there have been several detours along the way, Rich. As I said, I didn't intend to go to Oberlin, and I didn't intend to end up in the ministry. I was going to be an English teacher, what I was going to be, but I was not at all. I really wasn't very happy with what I saw at Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. So when we had such a good relationship with people at Oberlin, I just decided, and partly I decided to enroll there because this college friend of mine was enrolling there, and I knew him, and I liked the school. Oberlin's a nice little community too, as you know, so that's the story.